Evening, sir. License and registration.
I've got something better. Here.
What am I looking at?
Central Intelligence Agency. Name's Damon Morgan. It's all valid.
Right. Mind telling me what you're doing in this neighborhood tonight?
Official duty. That's all I can say.
You're in an unmarked vehicle. Badge like that could be fake. I'm going to need you to come down to the station
Not
with
happening.
me.
Call my supervisor. He'll clear it up.
The dashboard camera captures everything in silence. Red and blue emergency lights wash across the hood of a patrol vehicle parked along the shoulder of Route 47, just beyond the city limits. The time is 11:23 at night. The road stretches empty in both directions. No traffic, no pedestrians. Just the steady pulse of colored light against asphalt and the low hum of an idling engine. 40 feet ahead, a black sedan sits motionless. Maryland registration. Tinted rear windows. The kind of vehicle designed to avoid attention, which is precisely why it draws it on a night like this, in a neighborhood like this one. The officer steps out of his patrol car, flashlight in his left hand. His right hand rests near his duty belt as he approaches the driver's side door. The beam from his flashlight sweeps through the interior of the sedan. A figure sits behind the wheel, hands positioned at 10 and 2, posture upright, motionless, waiting. The window lowers. Inside is a black man in his late 30s, clean-shaven face, navy suit, tailored and pressed, white dress shirt, silk tie. His hands remain on the steering wheel, fingers spread wide, clearly visible. His breathing is measured. His eyes look forward until the officer's flashlight settles on his face. License and registration. The man's voice is calm, professional, rehearsed in the way that comes from training. Good evening, officer. I'm going to reach into my jacket pocket now to retrieve my identification. His movements are deliberate, slow. 2 fingers slide into the interior pocket of his suit jacket. He withdraws a small leather credential holder and extends it through the open window. Not a driver's license, something different. The officer accepts it, angles his flashlight toward the open bifold. Inside is a badge, federal insignia, embossed seal. A federal credential bearing an intelligence agency seal. Beneath a laminated photo is a name, Damon Morgan. The officer's flashlight remains fixed on the credentials. Several seconds pass. His tone shifts, not louder, but sharper. What is this? Damon's response comes without hesitation. That's my official federal identification, officer. I'm a CIA operative currently on active duty. I'm unable to disclose operational details, but I can provide you with contact information from my supervisor who can verify my credentials and my assignment. The officer doesn't respond immediately. His flashlight stays on the badge. Then, quietly, "This doesn't look real to me."
Damon doesn't argue. He doesn't raise his voice. "Officer, I understand skepticism. That's exactly why I'm asking you to verify it. A single phone call resolves this. I'll wait here as long as you need." If you're watching this and you believe accountability and transparency matter, especially in situations like this one, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Stories like this need to be told, and your support helps make that possible. Damon's hands return to the steering wheel. His fingers grip the leather. "Officer, I understand your concern. That's exactly why I'm offering to have my credentials verified. If you contact my supervisor or the agency's operations desk, this can be resolved within minutes. I'm happy to wait while you make that call." The officer takes a step back from the vehicle. His hand moves to his duty belt, not to his radio, to a position just above his holster. "Step out of the vehicle." Damon doesn't move right away. His voice remains steady, but there's a slight change in cadence, a note of urgency. "Officer, I'm respectfully asking that you verify my identification before we proceed further. I am on official government business. This vehicle is a federal asset. If you contact, step out of the vehicle now." The command is firm, absolute. No room for negotiation. Damon's jaw tightens. He nods once, slowly. "I'm complying, officer. I'm going to open my door now." He moves with precision, left hand on the interior door handle, right hand raised and visible through the window. The door opens. He places one foot on the pavement, then the other, and rises to his full height with both hands raised to shoulder level, palms facing outward. His suit jacket hangs without a wrinkle. His expression is controlled. There is no aggression in his posture, no resistance, only compliance. The officer moves behind him. Hands on the vehicle, spread your feet. Damon complies. His palms press flat against the roof of the sedan. His feet shift apart. The officer begins a pat-down search. Hands move along Damon's sides, down the length of his legs, across his back, along his waistband. No weapon, no contraband, nothing. You have any other ID? Driver's license? Anything? My driver's license is in the vehicle's glove compartment, officer, but as I've explained, the identification I provided is my official federal credential. I'm on active duty. I cannot discuss operational details without proper authorization. I'm again requesting that you contact my supervisor to verify this information. The officer steps back. There's a metallic sound. Keys, then the distinct click of handcuffs being removed from a belt. You're being detained for failure to provide adequate identification and suspicious behavior. Damon's voice rises slightly, not in anger, in urgency, in disbelief. Officer, I have provided you with federal credentials. I have given you a direct method to verify those credentials. I have complied with every instruction you've given me. Detaining me will directly interfere with an active federal operation. I'm asking you, please make the call. The officer's hand moves to his holster. The retention strap releases with a snap. The weapon remains in the holster, but his palm rests on the grip. Turn around, hands behind your back. For the first time, Damon hesitates. His shoulders drop slightly. His eyes close. When they open again, his expression has changed. Not fear, acceptance. He turns slowly, deliberately, and places his hands behind him. The handcuffs close around his wrists, metal biting into skin. The officer takes hold of Damon's upper arm and guides him toward the patrol vehicle. Damon's head is lowered. His breathing is controlled, rhythmic. He says nothing more. He's placed in the back seat of the patrol car. The door closes. Through the window, his face is visible in profile, calm, neutral. But his eyes are focused on something beyond the glass. Not the officer, not the road. Something distant. Inside the patrol car, the radio crackles. Dispatch requests a status update. The officer responds, one subject in custody, suspicious person, questionable identification, transporting to county holding for processing. Damon's head tilts back against the seat. His lips move silently. He's breathing in a pattern. 4 seconds in, hold for 4, 4 seconds out. The kind of breathing technique taught in high-stress training environments. The kind that keeps heart rate steady when control is the only thing between stability and chaos. The patrol car pulls onto the road. Behind it, the black sedan remains on the shoulder. Doors closed, lights off, abandoned. At the county holding facility, Damon is processed through intake. Fingerprints are taken. A booking photograph is captured. His personal effects are removed and cataloged. Suit jacket, tie, belt, shoes, watch, wallet, and his CIA identification, now bearing a stamped verification code and a handwritten signature from a supervising officer. The sergeant stands with arms crossed as Damon redresses. His tie is knotted with precision, his jacket smoothed, his shoes laced. When he's finished, the sergeant speaks. Your vehicle has been retrieved from the scene and is waiting for you in the visitor's lot. You're free to go. An internal review has been initiated regarding this incident. You may be contacted for additional information. Damon picks up the envelope. He folds it once and tucks it into his jacket pocket. He doesn't look at the sergeant. The operation I was conducting tonight had a very specific time window. That window closed 2 hours ago. Do you understand the consequences of that? The sergeant says nothing. Damon turns and walks toward the exit. As he reaches the door, he pauses. His hand rests on the frame. He doesn't look back. He simply stands there for 3 seconds. Then he pushes the door open and steps into the night. The body cam footage ends there, but the consequences do not. Within 72 hours, official channels begin to move. The CIA's Office of Congressional Affairs files a formal incident report with the Department of Justice. The report details the circumstances of the stop, the detention of an active operative during a classified assignment, and the procedural failures that allowed the situation to escalate. 3 weeks later, the law enforcement agency's Internal Affairs Division completes its review. The findings are documented in a 17-page report. Failure to utilize available verification protocols. Failure to contact supervisory personnel as requested by the detainee. Unnecessary escalation of force during detention. Improper justification for custodial arrest of a credentialed federal officer operating under lawful authority. The officer involved is placed on extended administrative suspension lasting 6 months. During that time, he is removed from patrol duties, barred from field assignments, and required to surrender his service weapon pending review by the State Law Enforcement Certification Board. Internal discipline operates under a different standard than civil liability. Departmental punishment addresses policy violations. Civil courts address harm. The two systems rarely move in parallel, and the gap between them often fuels public outrage. Damon Morgan's classified operation, the one interrupted by his detention, involved a classified counterintelligence monitoring assignment. The 2-hour delay caused by his arrest allowed the subject to alter digital communication patterns, rendering 12 weeks of surveillance data inconclusive. The investigation remains open but significantly compromised. In a sworn deposition taken 6 months later, Damon is asked whether he believes racial bias played a role in the stop. His answer is measured. "I can't speak to intent. I can only speak to actions. I identified myself as a federal officer. I provided official credentials. I offered multiple opportunities for verification through proper channels. All of those were disregarded. The facts speak for themselves." The follow-up question is direct. Do you believe this encounter could have ended differently? His response is equally direct. It could have ended significantly worse. 14 months after the incident, a civil lawsuit is filed in federal court. The complaint alleges unlawful detention, violation of civil rights under color of law, procedural misconduct, and interference with federal operations. The lawsuit names both the arresting officer and the employing agency as defendants. The case does not go to trial. After 9 months of legal proceedings, including depositions, discovery, and mediation, the parties reach a settlement agreement. The terms include a payment of $7,500,000 to Damon Morgan. The settlement agreement explicitly states that the payment does not constitute an admission of wrongdoing or liability by any party. It is described in court documents as a resolution to avoid protracted litigation and to allow all parties to move forward. The settlement is approved by a federal judge. The case is closed. This story forces uncomfortable questions into the open, about how authority is exercised when no one is watching, about what happens when established procedures are ignored in favor of personal judgment, about the gap between policy on paper and practice in reality, about the assumptions that shape interactions before a single word is spoken, about who is given the benefit of the doubt and who has to earn it every single time. Body camera footage doesn't interpret, it doesn't editorialize, it records. And in that recording, patterns become visible. Patterns of communication breakdown, patterns of procedural failure, patterns of escalation that depend not on actions taken but on perceptions formed. Damon Morgan was released because his credentials were ultimately verified. But consider the variables. What if the call had never been made? What if his supervisor hadn't been available? What if the badge had been dismissed entirely, and a detention became an extended arrest, and an arrest became an incident with irreversible consequences? These aren't hypotheticals, they're decision points, and decision points determine outcomes. The $7.5 million settlement reflects more than financial compensation. It reflects the value of a professional reputation, the cost of operational compromise, and the acknowledgement that procedural failures carry real consequences.
Settlements exist as a mechanism of accountability when systems fail to prevent harm in the first place. If this story raised questions for you, if it made you consider how quickly routine encounters can spiral when communication and verification fail, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Tell us what you think about accountability, about oversight, about whether the systems designed to protect everyone are working as they should. Your voice adds to the conversation. Your engagement ensures stories like this continue to be told. Because the camera was running that night, the camera captured everything. The stop, the escalation, the detention, the release, the aftermath. The footage is clear. The timeline is documented. The outcome is a matter of public record. The only unanswered question is this: when authority meets identity on a dark road at night, who gets verified first, and who gets handcuffed before questions are asked?